Welcome to Get the Facts. This is the program that provides you with information on government's policies and initiatives. I'm Theodore Henry. Today we focus on a very topical issue, the online teaching modality. Our resource person is Acting CEO, that's Chief Education Officer of the Ministry of Education, Youth and Information, Dr. Casson Troop. Dr. Troop, welcome to the program. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me, Theodore Henry. I'm happy to be here.
Wonderful, wonderful. Doc, let us get right into it. How are we managing as a country with regards to online teaching being the primary mode of education?
Well, Theodore, it has been a very interesting time in education. As you know, the world has been hit by the pandemic.
Right.
And like the world, Jamaica has been pivoting and we have been making the necessary adjustments so our students can be engaged. So we started out this academic year with schools beginning on the 6th of September for the first official teaching day.
Right.
And we have done so using multiple modalities. We have done so using the online learning, audiovisual learning, and use of our learning kits. It has been a very trying time because our students were yearning and have been yearning to get back into the face-to-face. Our teachers have been desirous of this experience as well. And you can understand our parents being anxious and wanting this modality to be available to our boys and our girls. So we have mixed emotions, but nonetheless, we are having school and we are seeing an increase in the number of students who are being engaged each week. In the first week of school, we saw 54% of our cohort being accounted for. Then we saw that moving up to 70% by the end of the second week. And by the end of the third week, we are 72% accounting for our learners. We are not comfortable with that as a Ministry of Education. So we are going back to the drawing board and a number of strategies are about to be launched to find those students who we are not yet accounting for.
Understood. Let's talk a bit about the strategies. You mentioned strategies for those who aren't being accounted for. But in a general sense, yes, we're here online, we're doing this, this is what the pandemic requires of us. But how do we ensure that this method of teaching is effective?
Well, what we have done here as a ministry, Mr. Henry, is that we went into a robust training program for our teachers.
Yes.
We had to make sure that our teachers had the capacity to deliver using these new modalities. It's different. It's remote. It's from home. It's from a space outside of their normal working place.
Using things they may
it's a
not
platform
have
that they're not accustomed to.
Yes.
And so we did a robust training initiative in partnership with some of our international universities. And I must pause to say that our teachers were so receptive. It's probably the first time in a long time that we would have launched a series of training programs and we would have seen a high take-up from our teachers. Our data would have shown that in excess of 24,000 teachers benefited from the training opportunities to make sure that they can navigate this platform. And so for that, we are really, really proud of our teachers. We are really, really proud of their willingness to engage. And I can tell you that they are trying their endeavor best to make sure that they can manipulate and benefit from this engagement. My own students, my own children are students, and I watch them on these platforms being engaged by their teachers. I see the teachers trying to do breakout rooms, group work. I see them trying to have intermittent camera checks just to make sure that the students are there behind that screen.
Right.
I see them using warm-up activities, jokes, pausing for students to reflect and to participate. I see them using the emoticons, just a normal kind of transitioning those things you use in the classroom onto the virtual space to make sure that the students are engaged. So that kind of previous learning is being brought into the virtual space, and I'm proud to see it happening.
Understood. So just real quickly, what sort of feedback has the parents and the children been offering to this?
To be honest with you, they want to go back to school.
But since they
can't. That's the general message you're getting. When are we getting back? We want to get back. But outside of that, we sense that persons are willing to try. They know that we are not in this situation by choice. And so there's a general sense of willingness. Parents are doing better. Last year, we had parents who were waiting. They were just waiting for the pandemic to pass.
Yes.
But they have come into the realization that we can't just wait. We have to do more. And so I'm seeing more students being engaged. I'm seeing more parents being prepared. I'm seeing more parents accessing help to get their students prepared and children prepared. So that's the kind of thing happening. They're anxious nonetheless to get back into the physical space, but persons are trying and more persons are online learning and using the other modalities.
All right. So, Dr. Troop, we're going to go to a break shortly, but I want you to really quickly just give me an idea of some of the ways in which the ministry, partnering with groups like the National Parenting Support Commission, are assisting those who aren't doing so well, because we know some people, it's not so great.
Yes, as you said, the National Parenting Support Commission is an agency of the Ministry of Education. And so in our National School Learning Intervention Plan, there's a parenting component that will see the National Parent Association working with the National Parenting Association of Jamaica and the Commission working together to reach out to parents to make sure that they are provided with the psychosocial support that they need. There's something that we call wraparound services. So we do the checks. What is the welfare need that you have? There are some parents who definitely cannot, get the tablets for the students. They can't secure a space for the student. They can't secure supervision support for their students because they have to be out working. And so the NPSC and the NPTAJ, along with our officers in the ministry, they are working with parents to find alternatives. One of the major strategies that we are using now is the working in bubbles and clusters and pods. Yes. Where parents come together as a group within a particular space and they roster themselves. So if 10 parents in a space have children going to school, they support each other by each person taking a time off to give the supervision that is required so the others can go to work. And that's the kind of communal support that we have been promulgating in this time of the pandemic. You have to pull together because no one is an island at this time.
Definitely, definitely. And I like what you mentioned, the fact that the ministry is reaching out to the parents. That is wonderful.
That's what this time requires at this time, and we have to go beyond.
Indeed. All right, let's take a quick break, and then we're going to pick up with some more information from the Education Ministry. Please stay with us.
Did you know that in a recent survey done by the OCA in schools across Jamaica, 43% of the students received inappropriate messages from strangers? The OCA wants you to be smart online. Never speak to persons you don't know. Parents, encourage your children to be social but be smart.
This message was brought to you by the Office of the Children's Advocate with support from UNICEF.
Welcome back to Get the Facts. We're talking with Dr. Troop, the Acting Chief Education Officer of the Ministry of Education, Youth and Information. Dr. Troop, now, in our first segment, we mentioned that really and truly, people just want to get back to school. We're coping, we're coping, but people want to get back to school. How soon do you envision us returning to face-to-face classes?
Well, when we started out this semester, we had all the plans for us to be back in the physical space. It just was not possible in light of what was happening globally and locally with spike, in the virus. And so we had to take a decision to make sure that we maintain the health and safety of our teachers and our students. You have been aware that we launched a special support to get our teachers vaccinated, and the take-up has been great because, again, we have to keep them safe. And then you are aware that we also benefited from the added layer of protection of having the Pfizer vaccine that can be provided to our students 12 to 18 years. And so we have included that in our risk ranking analysis to guide us in the safe reopening of school. So we are waiting now on the Ministry of Health to advise us as to when those additional vaccines will become available. And that information will guide us in terms of determining the fair and reasonable time that we can have the high schools or the secondary level institutions open for face-to-face. But whilst we await that, because as you know, it's a health crisis that we are in, and we cannot act outside of the directives of our Ministry of Health and the directives of our cabinet. But in the interim, we are in high gear preparing for our primary level institutions. As you know, that added layer of protection via the vaccine is not available to them because of their age. And so that would not have been included in the risk ranking analysis. But outside of that, getting the environment safe in terms of the physical space, being assessed as COVID compliant and safe for the students to go in. We have been preparing the schools to look at their numbers in terms of enrollment, organizing the physical classroom to make sure that we keep the physical distancing. So all the preparatory work activities are taking place as we speak. And we are hoping, it is our plan that beyond the midterm break, in October, we should be able to get some instructions out of our cabinet to advise our school leaders and parents as to how we will do this on a phased basis to make sure that we do not compromise safety at this time.
Indeed. The word is cautious optimism, I'm thinking, data-driven in collaboration with the Ministry of Health and Wellness. Now, we mentioned that there are people who are not so au fait with the technology, with the environment, and you mentioned that the teachers have really shown out, but not all of them are comfortable. Do you have any advice or any resource areas that teachers who aren't so comfortable with the online platforms that they can take advantage of, or some things they can do?
Definitely. As I indicated, we had a robust training plan for our teachers prior to the start of this academic year. But I'm pleased to advise our public that the program is online. It's on demand. So whatever our teachers need, they can go on the Jamaica Teaching Council website and they can access their on-demand training program. And I must say also that we have the on-demand training program for our principals, where we're looking at leading remotely, leading in the virtual space.
All right.
Because that also would have changed for them. They're accustomed to doing things face-to-face and administrating their institutions face-to-face. We actually provided some guidelines as to how can you lead remotely. And we have a training program on the NCEL website, the National College for Educational Leadership. That's on the website for our principals. And we have an ongoing training program for our teachers on the Jamaica Teaching Council website. So I'm just happy to know that the Ministry of Education would have been able to provide this ongoing support. In addition to that, we have our cadre of master teachers who have been trained and available to support our teachers. Once they request that kind of support through the JTC website, then the master teachers will provide that support. Our regional education officers are also trained and are ready to provide that support to our schools. So they're assigned to individual schools and they're working with them. What we did this year as well is to provide system administrators and lab technicians on a temporary staffing support budget for schools that would not have had these individuals. And these persons are trained experts that are there to support our teachers in setting up their classrooms online, in beautifying their classrooms, in doing the troubleshooting, and they are there just a phone call or WhatsApp away just to make sure that they can be sustained and supported in the virtual space. And of course, we have a number of accessibility tools in these platforms that our teachers have been trained to utilize to bring the classroom space alive, so the students don't feel that, it's so distant, and to make sure that there's that warm feeling in the space, checking in. We did a training program called Return to Happiness. And that's a training program that is very intimate with our teachers. That's also on the JTC website. And it's really looking at the psychosocial support for our teachers, looking at the person, the individual, helping them to treat with the demands of it for their own well-being before we ask them to help any other individual. So there is a constant focus on building the capacity of empathizing and supporting our teachers, because at the end of the day, they are the single most important variable that impact the student's success. And so we have to invest in them. What we did this year as well, Theodore, is that we provided some administrative support. So writing the lesson plan has been a burden for our teachers.
Yeah.
This year, we have removed that. We have outsourced that kind of work to some service providers who are now developing lesson plans. We started the academic year with over 400 of those plans available. So all our teachers need to do is to go to our website, to our Jam Learning website, download, and just teach.
Yes.
So we have taken away some of the administrative duties from them. And we are now developing our own attendance app so teachers can reduce the time in the classroom to mark the register and all of that. We are taking all of those administrative duties away from our teachers so they can focus on the student in front of them.
That infrastructure building, especially with the teachers at the center, sounds amazing. And I can't help but think, Doc, that this is a great time for teachers to upskill themselves, in this environment. We are just about out of time, Dr. Troop, but you mentioned something in our first segment, and I'd like us to close on that note. You mentioned that your children are students. And so just very briefly, give the parents out there some advice on helping to support these at-home students today.
Parents, I just want to say, get in touch with your schools. Please do not sit at home and wait out the pandemic. The time is passing and learning programs are ongoing. So I'm asking you first and foremost, get to your schools. I am aware that some of our grade 7 students, Theodore, they are not yet registered because parents are not certain and they're afraid and they perhaps didn't want their children to go to a particular school.
Right.
So they are just waiting. But I'm encouraging our parents. All our students, our grade 7 students, they were attached and placed in a secondary institution. Please do not deny the child of that learning opportunity. Visit your school, get your child registered, and get the learning program going. I'm also encouraging our parents, if it is that you may not have a device for your child, it doesn't mean that your child cannot continue learning. We have a televised program. The Ministry of Education has launched 2 television stations. We now have our own television stations in the Ministry of Education.
Yes,
eHome School Network Primary, eHome School Network Secondary. And these are provided on our television cable stations. And even if you don't have a cable provider, you just need to have a digital TV and it is provided free to air for you with a regular rabbit ear antenna.
Right, that little one there.
So once you have that antenna, you can access our TV station. And that is where we have engaged television presenters who are also teachers to engage your students, your children. So they should not be left behind. And if it is that you don't have a television, we have printed learning materials at every institution for your children. We have textbooks, we have workbooks, we have booklets. All of these can be printed at the schools and at our regional offices to make sure that your child can have some learning support going on. So no child, Theodore, should be out of school. There is some modality that is accessible. So parents, please, I'm begging you, make use of these resources and learning opportunities for your children.
Indeed, indeed. Thank you for that strong encouragement, Dr. Troop. This has been Get the Facts. Our guest was Acting Chief Education Officer, Dr. Cassan Troop. It was a pleasure speaking with you. Until next time, when Get the Facts brings you, as always, more important information, I'm Theodore Henry. Thanks for watching and take good care.